Welcome to Patty's Aquatics. Now in today's video, what I want to do is talk about no filter aquariums. I want to explain not only how they work, but how they thrive. So what is a no filter aquarium exactly? Well, it's one that does not rely on mechanical filtration. So we don't use sponge filters, canister filters, hang on the back, sumps, nothing like that. What it relies on solely is biological filtration. Now, for those to work, you need two key components in my opinion. That is obviously plants. Lots of them, more the better. Plants are key, but also in my opinion, is a deep substrate. Now these components work in almost perfect unison. It's like a symbiotic relationship. The waste that falls to the bottom of the substrate sits and gradually breaks down into that substrate where it feeds the roots of the plants. And then those plants, they are huge because they feed and they feed and feed. They feed on the ammonia, the nitrites and the nitrates within your aquarium, and they help filter your water. And it doesn't stop there because there is beneficial bacteria everywhere within your aquarium. It's on the sides of your glass, it's on your hardscape, it's on the plants itself. Like I said, it's in that deep substrate. It's everywhere, and they're all working in perfect unison to help create this natural ecosystem of an environment. So if you're asking yourself if these no filter aquariums are so great, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, the answer to that is because it's not for everybody. If you have no substrate aquariums or no live plants, it's going to be difficult to almost impossible to be able to achieve that. That being said, I truly believe there really is nothing wrong with mechanical filtration. I actually think it's a very important, useful tool for a lot of hobbyists. Now, why do I not use them? Well, that's a different story. I guess for me, you could say I'm sort of on a journey and have been for the last few years. Since I started these natural dirted tanks, I've sort of been thriving to get my ecosystems within my aquariums to become as natural as possible. And it kind of brings me back to the very beginning when I first got into this hobby, where I really knew nothing. And it was all, you needed to have filters, you needed to have all these components that are told you need to use to run, keep your tanks healthy and keep your fish healthy. Well, the more that I've got into this style of tank, I've learned more and more that a lot of these components really aren't necessary. They can be used and they can be beneficial, but they're not necessary. So the more I'm going into this head first, I'm realizing this, and that's what I'm thriving for. I'm thriving to get as natural of an ecosystem as I can within my aquariums, and that's my goal. Now, speaking of natural ecosystem aquariums, you can run this style of tank with no filters in non-dirted tanks as well. If you go back and look at one of my old videos, removing filtration from my aquarium, I had my 75-gallon puffer tank when it was upstairs. I documented the entire process. I turned the filter off at first, and then I tested the water over about a 2-month period. I found that my nitrates held at 10 parts per million. And that was after my canister filter was even removed. Now, it only had black diamond blasting sand in there and quite a few plants, but it sustained that without a filter. And what if I told you you could run a Goldfish tank without a filter? Well, I had that as well in my 100-gallon Rubbermaid tub down here. I had that koi and 5 goldfish in there with no filter, and it's not dirted. I have pea gravel as a substrate, and that as well. I never went over 10 parts per million nitrates. Now, I had plants in it though. That was the key. I had lots of plants. Now that koi and a few of those goldfish are no longer in there. I have 2 goldfish, a bunch of plecos, and a bunch of other random fish in there, and guppies and endler mixes. But again, no filter, just pea gravel as substrate, lots of plants, and it thrives and succeeds and stays at about 10 parts per million nitrates. Now that I told you a lot of good things about these no filter aquariums, like the symbiotic relationship between the substrate and the plants and everything within that aquarium to create a natural ecosystem, what are some cons about a no filter aquarium? The biggest one for me, in my experiences, would have been the loss of water flow from those filters. Some examples would be the fact that they were able to help circulate water around heaters if you use them to kind of help distribute that heat throughout the aquariums. Also, it kind of helped move the stuff at the bottom of the substrate. There would always be a current to kind of help circulate that water to kind of filter out some of those particles. which can lead to a little bit more algae. But the solution for me then is I put air stones in my aquariums. Now I put them all by my heaters. That way it would help circulate and distribute that heat throughout the aquarium, and also gave some water movement in the aquarium, which kind of did the same effects as a filter did. Next thing I want to talk about are the misconceptions of having a no filter aquarium. Now, I've seen people make comments on some of my videos. I've read in forums about people as well, basically not understanding. It's the same almost misconceptions as people have with like dirted aquariums, that you can't keep many fish in them, that you can barely feed them because you're just going to kill them and put them in very bad conditions. Well, I'm here to say that is all not true if it's done correctly. Have you seen my aquariums? If anyone hasn't seen my aquariums, look, I am loaded with fish, loaded with snails, loaded with shrimp, but they survive and they thrive because I do it right. I have a deep substrate and I have lots of live plants, and they all work together. They work together in a perfect unison. So it's not just the plants and it's not just the substrate. The fish, the shrimp, the snails, all the inhabitants, everything works together. The fish feed and they produce waste. The waste feeds the plants. The waste feeds the substrate, which in turn feeds the plants. And the plants filter the water, which in turn keeps the fish healthy. And that cycle keeps going and going and going. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're someone watching this considering setting up a no-filter aquarium, my suggestion would be just do it. Just make sure you do your research and do it right. Get lots of live plants and a deep substrate, whether it's dirted or not. And before long, your tank is going to be thriving. So if you have any questions or experiences you want to share, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. It's a big reason why I've been doing these type of videos for a little while now, is to kind of share my experiences and document them that have happened to me over the last 3 or so years that I've been keeping these dirted filterless tanks. I find them very intriguing and cool, and when I first started them, there wasn't a lot of answers for me. And I want there to be a platform for people to be able to discuss, share their experiences, whether they agree or not agree, but to try to learn from each other. And that's like kind of the whole point of it. That's why I ask questions, and that's why I tell people to leave comments, and I enjoy reading other people's comments. Even if I don't personally agree with you, it doesn't mean that I don't understand you or where you're coming from. And that's like the biggest thing. We need to understand each other and learn from each other. We all don't have to do the same thing, but in the end, as long as we're keeping healthy, thriving tanks, that's all that matters, and that's what we can bond on. So that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button. If you do, make sure you hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss any of my upcoming projects. I hope to see you next time here at Patty's Aquatics.